So I'll be honest, I'm a bit mixed on the PS5 Pro right now. I feel that we need a lot more time and a lot more games to fully dissect how the system is going to look basically throughout this generation and the tangible differences that it's going to be able to provide. Right now, we are looking at a series of games that have been patched for the console and have been upgraded with maybe enhanced detail or just been basically combining both the quality and performance modes of the base system into one mode, utilizing the PSSR, and the results have been sometimes great and other times really bad, even worse off than the base model. So what I want to do in this video is I don't want to answer the question of is the PS5 Pro worth it. Ultimately, that's going to come down to your own subjective value, what you sort of value with your game experience, the differences that the Pro is offering, your research, whether or not that's important to you, and ultimately whether the investment is going to provide you at least a return that you're going to be able to appreciate. Ultimately, I think it's going to be different for every single person. Some people, in fact, I would say most people are going to look at this as a negligible upgrade that doesn't really do that much in terms of looking to what they want out of their gaming experience. And other people are going to look at this and say, well, it's resolving a lot of the issues that I currently have right now with the way that I'm experiencing games. So I'm going to cover this from that perspective and try to be as objective as I can in terms of, just telling you guys straight up basically what my experiences were, what I want out of this system, what the boost mode is like. I also played some PS4 games on this system, so sort of the enhancements that this console brings to those older games. And I even watched a 4K Blu-ray movie on this console as well, so I'll give my impressions regarding all that here. I think that this system, the PS5 Pro, just the start here, is immediately less appealing if you're someone who doesn't mind playing in the quality mode at 30 FPS for some of your games. You're going to go over to the PS5 Pro, and at times you might even get less detail than you did on those quality modes with the PS5. A lot of games, unfortunately, developers have gone in there. They've removed the two modes. They removed performance and quality mode. They've given you one mode that is meant to basically give you the best of both worlds, but as a result, the PS5 version, the base PS5 version in its quality mode can at times look better. It looks better, it has higher fidelity graphics, sometimes crisper resolutions compared to that of the PS5 Pro. And this is my main frustrating point with this platform, is that it is meant to come in. Sony was meant to come in here and say, basically, this is a no compromise experience. You no longer have to choose between fidelity or performance mode. You're getting the best of both worlds. But there are compromises. Of course there are. They hit that target frame rate, and they're taking away graphical fidelity. Now, one could say, well, you're not going to notice the fact that there's, a little less trees in the distance, or maybe on the ground there's less rocks or less detail here and there. You're not going to notice that the smoke is running at a slightly lower resolution, but as someone who's doing side-by-side comparisons with these things, and again, I don't mind playing in the quality mode with these games. There's a lot of games like Horizon I played in its quality mode, the God of War games I played in the quality mode, Hogwarts Legacy I played in its ray tracing quality mode at the time. I'll choose the quality mode if the difference in visual fidelity is dramatic. I don't want to lose too much out on the graphical fidelity of a lot of these games. And when I'm seeing games like Star Wars Outlaws, for instance, which looks better on its PS5 quality mode than it does on its PS5 Pro implementation, or something like Avatar, which looks better in its quality mode on PlayStation 5 base, it's frustrating because you invest in this platform, you're expecting that you're going to get basically the best of both worlds, and ultimately you're getting a compromised, albeit slightly better experience at 60 FPS compared to what the normal base PS5 could offer you. So immediately as I'm saying that, this system, as I said before, is less appealing if you don't mind playing in 30 FPS. If you played a bunch of these games at 30 FPS, and to you, you care about graphical fidelity enough that you don't want to lose too much out on the cohesiveness of the image in order to get 60 FPS, yeah, the PS5 Pro is going to offer you sometimes a better experience, but a lot of the times, especially with these games that we have now, a compromised experience where you will actually get better visuals on the PS5 Pro, albeit at half the frame rate target, okay? So yeah, it's a bit frustrating in that regard. What I want to do is I want to cover the games that I played. So I'll go over the PS5 Pro Enhanced titles that I played, my general impressions of them. I'll go over the older PS5 titles that I played and how boost mode affects the way that these games play now. And I'm also going to go over some PS4 games. I played a couple PS4 games on the system and used the enhancement option, which is in the video graphical settings for the system, and also 4K movies. All right, so let's touch upon that one by one. So in terms of enhanced PS5 Pro games, again, I think it's important to note that right now we are seeing games that came out pre-launch of the PS5 Pro that have since been upgraded via patches for the PS5 Pro Enhanced titles. Now, there are a couple games I was really hoping for some major advancements to, but we are still waiting for either fixes of these games because the upgrades that the developers put in have completely broken the way the game looks. So that's one end of the side here of the argument. And then we're also waiting in sometimes cases where developers have just said outright that they don't have any plans for these games, so the games are kind of stuck looking how they were before. There are other instances where developers have gone in, and as I said before, they've actually taken away graphical options, so you don't no longer have fidelity and performance mode. They've combined those options together, and you are getting a compromised visual experience compared to that on the base PS5. So I'll try to cover those in this video. I can't talk about every game I played because we would just be here for, hours, but I'll try to cover the at least really impressive games and the not so impressive ones. I have to say that the most impressive game visually I saw out of the PS5 Pro was Horizon Forbidden West. The moment I booted up this game, I was just like, my jaw dropped. Now, what Guerrilla Games has done is they basically added in the same 3 graphical modes as you got before. However, it's now been upgraded with enhanced detail as well as their new temporal upscaling algorithm. Now, this is not PSSR, which is Sony's AI upscaler that launched with the PS5 Pro. This is Guerrilla's own in-house, upscaling method that is supposed to affect their future games, but has been basically upgraded to work with their older games, such as Horizon Forbidden West, okay? And also Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered works the same way as this. But the moment I booted up Horizon Forbidden West, I was shocked. Now, you have 3 graphical modes to choose from. You have Fidelity Pro, which is like basically their fully maxed out experience at 30 FPS. There's a Balanced Pro mode, which is supposed to target around 40 FPS with slightly decreased graphical fidelity. And then their Performance Pro mode, which targets 60 FPS with, they're saying, high settings of graphics. Now, I am very susceptible to noticing changes in the visuals. I notice differences in shadow quality, difference in volumetrics, and I'm pretty good at picking out the differences of the image. I will say that for the life of me, I couldn't figure out the difference between these 3 modes, except in terms of frame rate and performance. Now, they say in the settings that you get high graphics versus like max fidelity, but I walked around this game for like an hour and I was looking at various different things such as the foliage, the draw distance. I took it up to the air and was looking at the volumetric clouds and stuff. And besides perhaps a few changes to the lighting where it looks like perhaps the volumetrics are running at a slightly crisper resolution, or in fact the character models get some type of enhanced lighting upgrade during certain scenes, I was hard-pressed to notice any difference between these 3 modes. Resolution-wise, although the Performance Pro mode is running at a lower resolution compared to all these 3, it looked so sharp, it looked so crisp, so detailed, that it just looked like the game was almost like you just took off like this blur filter from the game before. It's incredible. All the aliasing issues have been cleaned up here. The game looks just absolutely clean and such a joy on the PS5 Pro. I was very, very, very impressed with the way that this game looks. It helps as well that this is one of the best looking games for the system, and still is to this day. It's a phenomenal piece of art and graphical technology that's powering this thing. But man, this game looked incredible on the PS5 Pro, and I gotta say that I am now a little bit more excited to go back and play Horizon Zero Dawn through its remaster, just to be part of this world again with this crisp and this clean of visuals presented from the PS5 Pro. So it's one instance where it was like, it looked better. I swear to you, it looked better than the PS5 base version did in its quality mode, which is how I played this game originally. So it looked better in its performance mode. Not to mention, let's talk about frame rate here. Basically, all the frame rate targets are hit perfectly. In fact, in its performance mode, if you have a 120 hertz display, you can play this game in now 60 to 70 FPS. It runs slightly above 60 FPS. And the fluidity, the response to the controls is just so good. It's such an incredible game to look at, and it feels so good to play. I was just very, very impressed with Horizon Forbidden West on PS5 Pro. God of War Ragnarok, here is another game I looked at. Now, I played this originally in its fidelity mode on base PS5. What we have here are a series of options. Now, what's interesting about God of War Ragnarok here is that Sony Santa Monica has gone in here and actually given you the option to enable PSSR as well as disable it and use the game's old TSR method, its temporal super resolution method. Now, I looked at the differences between both of the implementations, and it seems to me that the TSR method does have a little bit more specular aliasing, especially around Kratos' armor. You're going to notice some more aliasing and stuff like that. Now, PSSR cleans it up a lot nicer. It looks a little bit softer, but at the expense of a more stable image. I will say, though, that one of the interesting things is that you're actually getting a higher frame rate in its TSR, its older implementation. You can play this game at up to 100 frames per second if you're playing in its TSR mode through its old upscaling algorithm. With PSSR, it's running at around 60 to 80 FPS at times. It looks really crisp. It looks really good. But I did actually notice a couple of artifacts. In particular, it was in Kratos' beard, where there seems to be some swirling artifacts. Now, this is consistent with the test that Digital Foundry and a lot of other technical YouTubers have done, where you notice kind of these artifacts within foliage and fine hair and whatnot. So in Kratos' beard, I have to say that I noticed it because I went looking for it. However, ultimately, you are getting a little bit more crisper detail and a more stable image in regards to its newer PSSR implementation, and you're still getting 60 to 80 FPS. The game just looks fantastic and runs perfectly smooth. Graphical fidelity and the way that things looked, everything looks pretty much the same here as I remember. I didn't notice any increases in actual visual fidelity, but I think that this is a really, interesting implementation because it gives you the option to basically make the game look how it did before, but also see how the game was upgraded for the PS5 Pro. And what Sony Santa Monica has done here is basically improve the image clarity and the stability of the image at the expense of a couple of artifacts. Again, in particular, Kratos' beard, where you're going to notice a little bit of those swirling artifacts if you go to look for it. Now, when you're playing the game, there's so much action and stuff, everything's so fast paced, so you're not really going to see this thing in real time. It's not going to affect really your enjoyment of the game, but if you go looking for it, you are going to actually, see what I'm talking about there. Another really impressive game I tested out was Hogwarts Legacy. Now, this is a game I played on PS5, the base PS5. I actually played in its ray tracing mode because I had felt at the time that the visual differences between its ray tracing mode and its performance/quality mode were substantial. You were getting a much better looking game in its ray tracing mode, even though it was targeting a 1440p resolution, I believe, but at 30 frames per second. Now, I had a great time playing this game in that mode, and that's the mode I recommended in my review when I talked about this game. But this game has been upgraded for the PS5 Pro. It now uses PSSR, and they give you enhanced ray tracing effects, and they fix the image quality issues with the quality and performance modes. Now, I will say that no longer is the ray tracing mode my preferred method for how to play this game. They've actually gone in here and increased the actual graphical fidelity. The game looks better. You're seeing more geometry, you're seeing better draw distances, just much better graphics overall in its performance mode. And on top of that, PSSR completely fixes all the image softness issues that I was seeing with the original base PS5. You're getting basically what looks like a pseudo 4K image. It looks so sharp, so crisp. But on top of that, you're also getting a better looking game. And I was comparing both the ray tracing mode to the performance mode. And although you lose the ray tracing, which for the ray tracing mode, they added ray trace shadows and lighting, as well as the previous ray trace reflections. They actually increased the resolution of the ray trace reflections from the base PS5. But when you switch over to the performance mode, the image now looks so crisp. You're getting screen space reflections instead of the ray trace reflections, which have their own issues. But the implementation here is done in a way that you're actually not losing any reflective qualities on objects. So for example, you know, you have like the floor during the Hogwarts castle and stuff, that still is reflective via, you know, screen space reflections, SSR, just they're not, you know, ray traced like they are in the ray tracing mode. And the bottom line is that you're still getting a reflection, although it's not as pristine as the RT reflection. You're still getting a nice reflection when you're walking around playing the game, and you're getting really crisp image quality as well as really smooth frame rate. It is now my preferred method for playing this game is its performance mode upgraded for the PS5 Pro. It looks phenomenal. And I will say that if you're someone who didn't play through Hogwarts Legacy or was holding off on it, this game now, the way it looks on PS5 Pro is phenomenal. Very, very impressive, and I was very happy with that system. So those are some examples of games that are actually utilizing the PS5 Pro in, I would say, a very positive way. You're actually seeing a tangible difference. You're seeing a better performing game. You know, you're getting better visual feedback and stuff. On the other hand, we have games that are just not utilizing the system very well. And these are some of the more recently released titles. A lot of these are unfortunately third-party as well. So if we're looking at some of those games, you have Silent Hill 2, which is like the big one. Although this is a Sony-timed console exclusive, it is available on PC. What we are seeing with Silent Hill 2 is actually worse visual quality than what we got on the base PS5. Actually worse visual quality. You're getting a downgrade in terms of the base resolution, and also the developers have not gone in here and done anything dramatic to the graphics whatsoever. So on the base PS5, you had your quality mode, you had your performance mode, both were targeting 30 and 60 FPS respectively. Now on the PS5 Pro, what you are getting right now is basically the same graphical fidelity as what you got prior on the base PS5, but now PSSR is cleaning up the image, or it's supposed to clean up the image. Now, they upgraded Silent Hill 2 originally, but it was so bad, it invoked so much just issues with the way that the image was resolving. So many artifacts, it completely broke the ray trace reflections and stuff like that. It did such a bad job that they actually released a hot patch, a hot fix basically for this game that removed the option of PSSR in its performance mode. I think quality mode is left unchanged, but this is an example of a game that we're now waiting for a patch to basically fix all of the issues with, which sucks because this is a recently released title. This is one that I've been really excited to play, and now I'm sitting here kind of, you know, oh, gotta wait for it to be patched, gotta wait for it to be fixed. As if it was broken basically on launch. You're getting a better experience with this game on base PS5, and you're not losing out. You are not losing out on any graphical fidelity whatsoever. The game looks the exact same in terms of its graphics on PS5 as it does on PS5 Pro, okay? And then we have a game like Star Wars Outlaws that had quality and performance modes on the base system, and quality mode now on base PS5 looks better than the PS5 Pro single mode that you can only, you know, play in on that system. You're actually losing out on graphical fidelity compared to the quality mode, and although it's running at 60 FPS and it looks, you know, decently better, I should say, than its performance mode, it's only cleaning up the image. You're actually not gaining any graphical fidelity or quality with the game. And I'll be honest, that is a game that personally for me, I wouldn't have any problem playing that game at 30 FPS. It's an open world game. It's kind of, slower paced. The action is just kind of over the shoulder third person shooter stuff, and there's a lot of exploration. That's a game that I would have played in its quality mode on base PS5. And now I'm sitting here saying to myself, well, maybe I should just keep my PS5 around, because I would prefer to play this game with more graphical fidelity, with more effects, than just having less fidelity and less cleanliness to the image in its 60 FPS performance mode. That's a compromise that I'd be willing to make. So that is another game. They just recently updated Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora as well. 2 Ubisoft games, keep this in mind. And Assassin's Creed Mirage, by the way, has the same issue, where now, again, you only have one mode. It's less graphically beautiful than compared to the quality mode on base PS5, and now there's a ton of artifacts in the image because developers are just saying, oh, release it with PSSR, and they're not properly calibrating PSSR, or they're not, something here is amiss. And the thing is, we've seen really great implementations with PSSR, but apparently there's multiple different versions of this algorithm that are out there in the market, and people might be using an older version compared to a newer version that fixes all these issues and just needs to be implemented. I don't know. But this is an issue that we're seeing with a lot of games. Dragon Age: The Veilguard had the same problem. There are some other games as well that are kind of eluding me right now. Alan Wake 2 is a big one I was really waiting for. They actually increased the graphical fidelity, right? They brought ray trace reflections to the quality mode on PS5 Pro, which is great. That's exactly what I wanted them to do. They brought part of the RT reflection suite on PC to the console, but the image looks terrible. So you're basically getting a game that shimmers more and looks at times even worse than the previous implementation on base PS5, but now you get RT reflections. This is a big issue right now. Now, again, this is why I feel that we still need more time with this console, because it's unfair for me to say, well, the PS5 Pro is not worth it, and all I'm looking at are older games that were released prior to this console's launch. It's going to be really interesting to see what 2025 brings along, and I'll talk about more towards the end of this video of what I want for this system to bring in terms of core gameplay experiences and differences here. But needless to say that these are just an example of other, there are plenty of other games as well that I didn't mention here that have been upgraded for the PS5 Pro that just don't look that great, and actually are graphically worse than they were on base PS5. And as someone who, I would sit there and I would play these games in their quality mode over their performance mode, and immediately it's frustrating to see that, oh, I'm actually getting a graphically compromised experience compared to what I could be getting on my base PS5. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have boost mode, which is meant to increase frame rate output for games that were not enhanced with the PS5 Pro, so utilizing the extra power that PS5 Pro offers and trying to boost frame rate. Now, Sony has been saying that this is a 45% increase in GPU power. The actual metrics and stuff that we have seen actually showcases that we are not getting 45% of increases in frame rate and stuff like that. That's not what we're seeing here. So, it's interesting. I had to say that the first full game I played on my PS5 Pro was the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection. Now, this was fantastic, and I have to say that the PS5 Pro gave me the exact experience that I really wanted out of this system. You can now play Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy in its fidelity mode at 60 FPS. You can now put it in fidelity mode on the game. This has not been upgraded for the PS5 Pro whatsoever, but you have an unlock frame rate toggle in the options. So you can put it in its fidelity mode, which renders at 4K, unlock the frame rate, and thanks to boost mode, you can now play Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy at 60 FPS. Mostly. There are some dips, but with VRR, man, this game looks so clean. It looks so smooth. I had a great time playing through these games. In fact, The Lost Legacy surprised me because I thought it would run worse because it's more open-ended in terms of its environments, but it actually ran a bit better than Uncharted 4. So the bottom line is both of these games can now be played in 4K, native 4K at 60 FPS. The games look incredible, and the PS5 Pro just did a phenomenal job. It gave me the exact experience that I was looking to get out of those games, and I'm so happy I held off on playing those games because I was kind of itching to go back and experience them, and getting to experience them now on full native 4K at 60 FPS with the upgraded graphics via the remasters. That was just phenomenal, and I had a great time. I put a big smile on my face while playing. Now, I also tested a couple of other games. Deathloop was another one. Now, I previously played this in its performance mode, which is really the only way to play the game. You can now play this game in its quality mode, which outputs at native 4K, and you can now play it at a locked 60 FPS. The game doesn't look to even skip a beat. So where previously quality mode was running at like 30 to 40, or it was running basically in between. It was more like 40 to 50, I would say. Wasn't as low as like the 30s, but you basically got the extra frame rate now to play this game at native 4K 60 FPS thanks to the boost mode on offer there. So I had a great time playing that game. Another series of games is the Koei Tecmo games. So think like Wo Long, Fallen Dynasty, as well as Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origins. You can now play those games in its quality mode, which outputs at a much higher resolution at now 60 FPS locked because of boost mode. So I am very happy with boost mode and what it's actually offering. You are seeing games that were targeted previously in their quality mode to hit 60 FPS now actually hitting 60 FPS. And games that have an unlocked toggle option, you can now play them at basically a locked 60 FPS. Even though there are dips, VRR can clean that up very, very nicely. So even though the boost mode is not really hitting the actual targets and the metrics that Sony was putting out there, I have to see that in terms of it being a tangible difference, being able to play these games with much more pristine visuals at much higher frame rates really made me happy, especially the Uncharted collection, which just looks incredible. So even though those games are not enhanced for the PS5 Pro, you can now basically play them in their best possible presentation, and thanks to the developers leaving the frame rate unlocked, you now get basically perfect performance at 60 FPS or near around 60 FPS. With VRR cleaning up any of the drops that may happen in between. Now, in addition to that, I also tested out some PS4 games. I wanted to play Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Now, this is a game that was not upgraded for the PS4 Pro. It's stuck at 900p 60 FPS target on the base PS4. Now, the base PS5 went in here and basically perfected the frame rate so it ran perfectly solid, while at the same time fixing a lot of the texture streaming issues and stuff that would occur. So it was basically already a perfect presentation on the base PS5, but the PS5 Pro actually offers an option to enhance, they say enhance some PS4 games with better image quality. Now you have to read this through very carefully because it says some PS4 games. Basically, in my experience, any games that were not upgraded for the PS4 Pro apply to this option. And what this system basically does is it tries to upgrade through a sharpening filter some of the HUD elements and UI and stuff like that, as well as how the game looks. Now, 900p on a 4K TV can look really, really bad, but especially with no upscaling, because this was pre, all this AI-driven stuff like DLSS and stuff like that. So, but I will say this, now on Sony TV specifically, you have this option called reality creation. Now, everyone who has a Sony TV will tell you this is like the single best thing that they've ever seen, and this is why, part of the reason why they invest so much in Sony televisions. Reality creation allows me to play these older 360 and PS3 games on a 4K TV and actually not lose any of the detail in the graphics, because a lot of these times the lower resolution games will actually look a lot softer than they did before. This is why devices like a RetroTink upscaler are actually invented to help bring back some of that clarity. And reality creation works on a granular level to basically enhance the detail and textures that were otherwise invisible. And I played a bunch of 360 and PS3 games on my Sony OLEDs here using reality creation, and it allows me to basically play these games as they looked originally on 1080p native TVs without losing any of the sharpness or focus that 4K TVs would unfortunately have due to such a high pixel range and such a low resolution trying to upscale to that range. Now, reality creation here doesn't do, the enhanced PS4 option on PS5 Pro doesn't really do as much of a good job as reality creation. It doesn't work so much on a granular level. With reality creation, you can really fine tune it to every game because you have a slider of 0 to 100. So you can just find that perfect detail where it doesn't invoke too much aliasing and it just looks phenomenal for every single game that you're playing. But you don't have that granular option when it comes to the PS5 Pro. It's just a toggle that goes on and a toggle that goes off. I will say this most notably affects the UI and the HUD elements. I've noticed immediately when playing Mirror's Edge, especially because this is such a high contrast game, I felt this would be perfect to test out this feature. When you're looking at the map, when you're going through the menus of the game, the extra sharpness that this option provides makes it look like a native 4K UI. It actually adds in detail. And when you're just kind of looking at the map of the game and again, going through the different options and settings, I did notice a much cleaner resolve in terms of the fine lines, the text, and all that stuff that looked at times really close to a native 4K image. Now, when it came to the actual game, I did notice some extra sharpness. But this is another good example of the difficulty that this system has to work on, because when you have a 1600 by 900p native resolution that has been trying to upscale through 4K and you're utilizing this option, what you're basically seeing the system do is it's adding in some sharpness, but it can't do anything to the aliasing of the image. This isn't adding some cool kind of anti-aliasing method on top of the presentation. In fact, I'd almost prefer it if Sony could work on this feature more, because if they can get some of the AI features that PSSR brings to those games implemented, if they could somehow get this to work on the enhancement option for PS4 games, it could clean up any of the aliasing artifacts that we would see from a lower resolution game like this. So what I will say is that when it comes to the actual game itself, and I took a couple of screenshots here when I was playing and stuff like that, you really have to kind of pixel peep. You'll notice slightly sharper edges on the PS5 Pro versions of these screenshots. Does it make a tangible difference when you're playing the game? No. When you go to the UI, when you bring up the menus, when you bring up the map, that's when you'll notice, oh, the text looks a lot clearer, a lot more defined. You notice the fine lines and the detail there within the menus. It seems to work really well when it comes to those types of UIs and stuff like that. So yeah, I will say that this is not a reason to go out and buy a PS5 Pro. It doesn't make these PS4 games look that much better, except when it comes to the UI elements. This is a sort of nice to have feature. However, I will say this: if you already have a Sony TV, you can already utilize reality creation to get you basically near, if not better, results than what you can get with this implementation on the base PS5, the PS5 Pro. So it is a nice feature to have. It's cool that they put it in there, but it doesn't offer much in terms of really noticeable differences besides when you're just in the menus for these games. Now, I also watched a couple of 4K Blu-rays on this console. I wanted to test this out because the PS5 Pro doesn't come with a built-in disc tray. You have to actually buy the disc drive separately. So I wanted to see how the noise would fare when you're watching a movie and if there's any playback issues. Now, on my base PS5, there are some playback issues with certain 4K Blu-rays. It seems like my Skyfall 4K Blu-ray, you'll watch it and you'll enjoy it for like 30 minutes, then all of a sudden it'll start skipping and stuttering, and it'll just go like frame by frame by frame by frame, and it's unwatchable. And if you fast forward to like the last hour or 30 minutes of the film, it'll actually kind of play perfectly fine. So it's a bit weird. It's a problem with my base PS5, and apparently I'm not the only one who has had this issue. There's a lot of people who have actually said that certain movies will just not play well, or seem to have I guess, streaming issues with the actual built-in base PS5 disc tray. So some people have sent their PS5s in to get replaced for this reason. I always just kept my system. But it's unfortunate. I will say that I had no issues watching 4K movies on the PS5 Pro. The PS5 Pro is not really doing anything to the image of these movies. It's not bringing you any enhanced detail throughout these films. You're still getting the same video output. And this is also another minor criticism I have, is that the PS5 Pro is still stuck at 32 gigabits per second of video bandwidth, which means you cannot get 444 chroma at 4K 120 hertz when outputting in games. But in movies, you still get 444 chroma because they lower it down to 24 hertz for the output. Regardless, that's a minor issue. It just would have been nice to have for kind of future-proofing the system and stuff like that, because RGB chroma is much better than just compressed 422 color. But regardless, I have to say that watching movies on this system was perfectly fine. Now, I did notice some disc noise a little bit when the disc was getting started. However, when nothing's happening on screen, you're going to notice a slight little hum. But when you're just watching the movie, I have to say that I didn't notice anything. Playback seems super smooth. Didn't seem to be any issues with noise whatsoever. So I think that this is a perfectly fine implementation of 4K Blu-ray playback. It would be nice if Sony implemented Dolby Vision playback for 4K Blu-rays on their system. It would definitely go a long way in terms of adding more value to the platform. But I'm sure Sony doesn't want to have to pay the licensing fees for Dolby to use their HDR algorithm, even though it's a little bit better. So it is what it is, but ultimately, I think that this is a fine 4K Blu-ray playback for just casual use. And if you already use your PS5 for 4K movies, you're not getting anything additional with the PS5 Pro. However, if you did have stuttering issues like I did, it seems like these detachable disk drives seem to be fine and have no issues with the stuttering. So as we close here, I want to talk about what my expectations for the system are, what I want out of the platform, and then we'll get into what it's actually delivering right now, and ultimately, we'll end it here with basically where I want to see the system be a year from now. Now, I was hoping that with the PS5 Pro that we were just going to close the gap ever so slightly to the maxed out PC experience. Gotta admit that the PC experience with all the ray tracing and stuff like that, all the bells and whistles, look phenomenal. And as someone who's been away from PC gaming for almost 10 years at this point, I can tell you that I do feel a bit of that itch to go back into PC gaming, because just the graphical differences of what we were getting with a lot of these games seems to be dramatic. All right. Now, what the PS5 Pro is really doing is it's really providing at its best, basically a cleaner image with the same detail. That is my main issue with the system right now, is that you're not really getting anything tangible in terms of increased graphics. Now, you can say the PS4 Pro was doing the exact same thing, but there are other games that came out where we actually saw increased graphical detail, better draw distance, better geometry, just more graphical, fidelity within the environments. I think games like Rise of the Tomb Raider had a much better looking game in its PS4 Pro implementation. You also had games like Kingdom Come Deliverance, which looked a lot better. And then there's a couple of other games. I think Warframe was another one where they actually went in and increased the graphical detail of games. So you had like all these developers going in and actually adding in more detail, and you were getting a prettier game that not only looked sharper, but also ran smoother at the same time. Now, the PS5 Pro is coming in here and it's saying, well, you're getting basically the same game as you got before. You're getting the same graphical detail. And then it seems to be in rare instances we see developers actually adding in more effects. So Insomniac has been doing this with their Spider-Man games as well as Ratchet & Clank, where they're actually adding in additional ray traced effects, better civilian density and stuff like that, and just more like better looking environments all around. So you're getting a better looking game when it comes to those developers. And also Remedy did this with Alan Wake 2, adding in the ray traced reflections, which makes a huge difference to the way that the whole overall presentation looks. But on the other hand, you have these games that are just sort of saying, well, we're going to take away some of the fidelity, we're going to take away some of the prettiness, but you're going to get basically 60 FPS with a slightly smoother, slightly cleaner image compared to that of the base PS5. And I gotta be honest that I'm considering at this point just putting away my PS5 Pro, putting it away, and then literally just continuing to play games on the base model, because I don't want to play games like Star Wars Outlaws with less graphical fidelity, Assassin's Creed Mirage, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, Silent Hill 2, Dragon Age The Veilguard is another one. There's a couple of other games here and there where it's like, man, they really had an opportunity here to make the game look even better, slightly prettier, and all the developers are doing is saying, put PSSR in, and then all of a sudden it's enhanced. And as a result, we're seeing games that have a lot of issues with PSSR. I don't think it's an issue with PSSR. I think it's an issue with how developers are implementing this technique, the AI-driven upscaler. I think that a lot of developers are just putting it in there, and this is the critique that a lot of people have with FSR and a lot of these other AI upscaling engines, is that people are using it as a crutch for optimization, getting the games to run at super low resolutions, and then basically calling it a day, saying, well, it hits the frame rate target, but when you're playing the game, you just notice artifacting and all this shit everywhere. I mean, I never thought that we'd be sitting here with the ninth generation of consoles playing games that were basically running in the same resolution as the PS3 and 360. I mean, just keep that in mind. PS3 and 360 was running games at 720p native or even slightly lower in some instances, and now we are seeing a lot of games at this time actually running in the same resolutions natively, but using AI to upscale these images to make it look like a 4K or higher resolution image. So that being said, you're basically seeing these compromised visual solutions, and these AI upscalers were never meant to run at such low resolutions, and as a result we're getting basically graphical artifacts everywhere. The image looks imbalanced, it's aliasing everywhere, there's specular stuff, there's just ghosting and all this ugly stuff happening to the games. And it's quite unfortunate because, I really feel like there's the potential here to really make the games look pristine and amazing. Now, the great thing about the AI stuff is that it's going to grow over time. But here's the thing. How is this system going to look like a year from today? We have a lot of games, a lot of high-profile games releasing in 2025. 2025 looks to be like the best year of this generation so far. Not just because of Grand Theft Auto 6, but you have other games like Death Stranding 2. We have Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which I'm very curious to see how it's going to look on this system. You have games like Pragmata and stuff, which is supposed to come out this year, and like a bunch of other projects. Clockwork Revolution from Microsoft. We have a lot of these other like really crazy ambitious games that are releasing. Judas is another one from the BioShock creator that are supposed to be coming out next year. How are those games going to utilize the PS5 Pro? Because I can tell you that if all we're going to be doing is saying, well, the game looks like it does on the base PS5, but now it's slightly cleaner, slightly sharper, I don't think that's appealing to the vast majority of people. I just don't. Now, Sony is saying that basically the PS5 Pro is selling faster than the PS4 Pro. The PS4 Pro accounted for 20% of all PlayStation 4 sales, is what Sony had said. I think although the PS5 Pro is selling out faster now, we're going to start to see that momentum kind of drop or stop. And I think what we're ultimately going to see is that the PS5 Pro is going to have only 10% of people who bought a PS5 bought the actual Pro model for this generation. I think that's going to be the actual divide. It's going to be a lot less than the PS4 Pro because ultimately the visual returns are very small compared to that of the PS4 Pro. The PS4 Pro, higher resolution. You bought a 4K TV, get the 4K console. Everyone can understand that. The PS5 Pro can't offer anything except for 8K, which no one really cares about or no one really has at this point. And considering the still absent amount of 4K content, keep in mind that most people are streaming now, right? So you're getting these substantially lower bit rate video sources through streaming. The 4K quality streams on Netflix and Amazon look terrible compared to native 4K or 4K from the Blu-rays, I should say. And not only that, but not even all 4K Blu-rays are running at 4K. So now we're trying to go to 8K, and people are talking about 8K as like the future. And there's really like no content out there besides games to really support that, and even then it's kind of a compromised visual experience because are we just going to use AI to upscale all of these games to look, the resolution that they're targeting? So it's a really weird situation to be in. This generation is really odd, and I think that the only main selling point of the PS5 Pro would be if Sony could close the gap further between console and PC. If Sony could offer more of the graphical suite on PC instead of just saying, well, here's the PS5 experience, but now it looks a little bit, cleaner and it runs a little bit smoother, then I think people would actually buy that console and be interested in it because you're seeing with your eyes, oh, this is a much better looking game. Okay, and you go on from there. But ultimately, you're at the mercy of the developers because this is a console and not a PC platform. It's not up to you. So you are left at the mercy of the developers to create these curated gaming experiences, and in many times you're going to run into situations like what Ubisoft is doing with Assassin's Creed Mirage, Avatar, and Star Wars Outlaws, where they're just going to say, yeah, we'll take away some of the graphical detail, but now it runs really smooth at 60 FPS and it looks, slightly softer or I guess slightly sharper. It looks just cleaner. That's it. It's enhanced. Is that a worthy trade-off to you? To me, No, you know, I'll take the 30 FPS if it means I'm getting a much better looking game. And depending on the game, of course, that is, I wouldn't want to play Elden Ring in 30 FPS, but, you know, there are some games where it's like, okay, you know, I don't need to play this in 60. I'd rather have the beautiful visuals. It's you know, not as demanding or not as challenging of a gameplay experience, and I just want to be immersed in that world and want to be immersed in those environments. And you're not always getting that with the PS5 Pro. You know, it's a bit interesting. So I don't know. I think it's going to depend on how people view this product. I can tell you already that I'm mixed on the PS5 Pro. When it works, it's phenomenal. It's doing a great job. Again, playing the Uncharted collection at 4K 60 made me so happy. And seeing how Horizon looked on this system it made my jaw drop. It looked phenomenal. But on the other hand, I'm looking at games like Star Wars. I'm looking at games like Silent Hill, like Alan Wake 2, and I'm just like, man, I hope this gets fixed. And that's, I think, the main thing is I hope it gets fixed. Will it get fixed? I don't know. You know, will developers release patches for these games? Star Wars Jedi Survivor is apparently another one where it just looks terrible on the PS5 Pro. It has artifacts everywhere, and it's frustrating. That's a game again I played in the 30 FPS fidelity mode on Xbox Series X, and I waited for patches for that game to be fixed and you know, smoothed out, and I had a great time playing that game at 30 FPS. But seeing now the PS5 Pro version, I'm like, great, now I have to wait for more patches. I have to wait for more freaking patches for these games to get fixed, because everyone's just like, release it now and we'll worry about it later. There are also other great potentials for this system. Cyberpunk 2077, I was really hoping was going to get upgraded for the PS5 Pro, but it isn't. CD Projekt Red has come out and said they have no plans to upgrade Cyberpunk 2077. I hope they change their minds, because if they can just add ray trace reflections to the PS5 Pro version of Cyberpunk, man, that would be incredible. That'd be amazing. But you know, again, we're stuck at the mercy of what the developers want to do for us. So I will say this, if you have a base PS5, it is at times offering you a better experience than the PS5 Pro, which to me is unacceptable for $700. When you're spending $700 for this system, and then you're spending even more than that because of the disk drive and all these other accessories, you really expect a premium gaming experience. And when you're seeing stuff like the base PS5 is actually looking better than the PS5 Pro, you know, it's really frustrating. It is. It's extremely frustrating. I'm glad I held on to my original PS5, because there is the very real possibility that I might just say, well, you know, I'll wait for patches for some of these games, but there are other games where I'm looking at them and I'm just like, is this ever going to get fixed? Do I expect Ubisoft to fix a lot of these games? No, to be honest, I really don't. I think Ubisoft, you know, is going to just, they patched the game, they're moving on, and that's the end of it. I think that there's so many other issues wrong with their company, and just seeing it the way that they treated their previous games, yeah, I don't really expect much in the way of massive improvements after these patches. But then there are other sides of the spectrum. I really hope that Remedy fixes Alan Wake 2. Really do hope that. I really hope that Bloober fixes Silent Hill 2 as well. Dragon Age the Veilguard, I hope that gets fixed. So yeah, there are two quotes. I'll end it here. There are two quotes when I was, you know, thinking about this review and how I wanted to do this video and show you guys and stuff. There's two quotes that came to mind about the PS5 Pro, and these are from respective reviewers, basically. So Digital Trends said this about the PS5 Pro. Part of the PS5 Pro's biggest issue is that the base PS5 is already so good. And you're thinking about that and you're like, yeah, that's actually pretty accurate. You know, the base PS5 is already delivering a comparable experience. Now, developers, I think, are at the heart of the issue with the fact that, you know, we have these games running at super low resolutions. Perhaps they're targeting the wrong things. Perhaps these engines need more time to be optimized. That is a separate issue. But, you know, we basically have a comparable visual return with the PS5, base PS5, and the Pro, you know, is basically sitting here coming in and not offering so much better in most instances. In the best case scenario, it's offering a cleaner image. But that's not always a given, as we've just gone over. The other quote was from, I believe, Games Radar, and they said, the PS5 Pro is an inconsistent, or excuse me, the PS5 Pro is an impressive yet inconsistent upgrade. which I completely 100% agree with. When the Pro works, it's great, but it's not always a given that it works, and that is the most frustrating thing. I will say this is a completely different console, and you have to look at this system completely different compared to how you looked at the PS4 Pro, because the PS4 Pro was like, man, you are actually getting a much better visual quality, graphics with better resolution, and at times mostly a more stable frame rate. Now, when we look at the PS4 Pro launch, when we looked at the PS4 Pro launch, we looked at the games that were upgraded before, there were issues with a lot of those games. You know, the fact that they were upgraded for the system. It wasn't always a given that you were getting a better experience right out of the gate. I think about Deus Ex Mankind Divided. I love that game, but at launch with the PS4 Pro, they basically put it to native 4K, and then the frame rate was in the mid-20s the entire time, and you're getting a very compromised experience. But at least you were seeing visually, oh, this looks a lot sharper. With the PS5 Pro, you know, I think the more frustrating thing here is that you're actually losing out on graphical fidelity. That just shouldn't be the case. You know, when the game looks worse than the base PS5, you really start to question what you're doing here. At least on PC, you would have the option that even though you invested in a more demanding graphic or more powerful graphics card, you could actually go in there in the game and change your graphical options and make it look prettier, or make it look, you know, not as pretty, but just target higher frame rates. At least you have the option. It's in the power of the consumer. But because this is a console, again, you're at the mercy of these curated experiences, and developers are not always going to deliver, or not always giving us, as it so happens to be, the best visual return for our investment. So yeah, I'm mixed on the PS5 Pro. I'm hoping by this time next year we have a much better idea of what the system can do. I am very interested to see how games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 look, because that should be a really graphically demanding game, and I really hope that this game, that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, looks a lot better on the PS5 Pro, where, you know, you're actually getting increased graphical fidelity, maybe some ray tracing effects or something to make it look dramatically different than that of the base PS5, or at least different enough where you're going to say, oh, yeah, it does look better, instead of having the base PS5 version in its quality mode look better, but then have the Pro basically run performance mode, but cleaner resolution. So anyway, yeah, I went on with this video long enough. Let me know what you guys think, I guess. I would not be running out to buy this system if I could do it again. This is a wait and see, and perhaps, hopefully, by this time next year, we'll have a better idea of what this system brings to the table. But I think Sony really needs to go back to the drawing board and help these developers, at least with the implementation of PSSR. I think that Sony needs to share some of their data, and that hopefully there needs to be some discussion points around saying, all right, you got your games enhanced, something's not happening here, something is going wrong, what can we do to fix it? And if they could work with these developers and work with these companies in order to get better presentations for these games out there, perhaps everything could be turned around and we have a really nice system that actually provides really great image quality with slightly better graphics and stuff like that to, again, just close the gap with the PC maxed out experience. At least just more ray tracing effects, something where you can see it, something where there's like a noticeable difference, and it's not just, oh, yeah, it looks better, I guess. Like that's what I feel like most of the time. That's what the PS5 Pro is doing. So, all right, you guys have a good one. I know it's been a long video. I'm gonna have to edit all this. I'm probably gonna shorten and clip some things together, but I hope my point came across well. This is a very weird system. It's definitely been one of the most strangest systems I've owned over the last several years, and you know, I'm just hoping that similar to, I feel like this system is almost like the PS3 right now in its infancy. That's what it feels like. It feels like it's like the PS3 right now, where you're like, man, there's a lot of power there, but they really need to get a handle on how to make this thing look, or how to properly calibrate all this power and to utilize it to make something that's visually really impressive. I feel like the PS5 Pro is very much like the original PS3 when it came out. Now, the original PS3 got a lot better as time went on. Now, Sony doesn't have as much time as they did with the PS3 to make this console better, but hopefully through all the stuff and the data that they're gathering and how they're going to update PSSR over time, I'm just hoping that a lot of these games a year from now, we're looking at this and we're saying, yeah, this looks fantastic. We're actually seeing a nice visual return. I guess we'll have to wait and see, all right? You guys have a good one. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'll talk with you all later.